This is on Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today it's Friday. It's April 5th, 2024. Thank you for joining us on TheTruthCentral.com. You can follow me on X at CorsiJerome1 and on Substack, JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. Now, the book that I've done on the JFK assassination, which is here, you look for it on Amazon for the full title, which is The Assassination of John F. Kennedy, The Final Analysis, with David Mantik. It's done quite well. It demonstrates that the scientific measurements of the optical density of the 3 X-rays of JFK's skull from the autopsy that are in the archives show that all 3 X-rays were forged, and that JFK was shot twice from the front and once from the back. Now, this book has been doing quite well, and in fact, it's rising on Amazon. I just check it right now for a minute and see where it's at. But it's not gotten much publicity because, of course, you can't get in the mainstream media. It's all today just completely dominated by the woke nonsense. But it's about 2,000 right now on rank and on Amazon. And I spoke with Steve Bannon yesterday, and Steve Bannon is now caught on to the book. And so I think it's going to be now a whole different game, a level of publicity, because with Steve Bannon's involvement, it's going to be a much bigger megaphone that we can get this story out. And I think it's very important that we do get this story out, because it's, in fact, essential to understand that the government has been lying to us for decades. And today, this has been a long week, and today I've done quite a bit of media this week on getting this book out. So we're going to cover a variety of stories today. But I will be back, I think I'll be starting to be on the war room now on this book, which I think is a breakthrough in terms of getting its visibility to the general public. Now, I've keyed up a couple of stories today, and Chris is going to play them. The first story I want to cover has to do with the tens of thousands of these mainstream journalists being laid off in what's called an extinction event. And I'm celebrating this. They closed down the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post. They closed down all these junk newspapers that are worthless to read. I wouldn't, the only reason to get the New York Times is if you got a dog and you want something to handle the poop. That's about the only reason you want the New York Times. Chris, let's play this first one.
Thousands of mainstream journalists are being laid off in what's being called an extinction event for corporate journalism. Of course, for regular Americans, that all sounds pretty fantastic, given those corporate journalists have become woke Marxist activists whose main purpose is gaslighting voters into the revolution. Meaning it might be a very good thing if those scribblers put away their keyboards and learn how to, say, install drywall. The pace is now quickening with last week's wide-ranging layoffs at the LA Times, once among America's most prestigious newspapers. They laid off 20% of their staff, including 115 journalists, and including their entire DC bureau in an election year, along with cutting sports, tech, business, and even breaking news media's traditional bread and butter. Meanwhile, BuzzFeed just shuttered its news division, which was once worth $1.3 billion and is now down 98%. Sports Illustrated just closed altogether. We've seen major layoffs at Time Magazine, Atlantic, The Washington Post, NPR, Bloomberg, and Condé Nast, which publishes the New Yorker and Vanity Fair. Even the New York Times cut 240 jobs after the Gray Lady lost tens of millions last year. In all, according to Axios, 20,000 media jobs were cut last year, which is up 6 times from the previous year. And so far in 2024, they appear to be accelerating. So what's driving it? In short, a loss of trust, which is turning off readers, taking ad revenue along with them. After all, if people don't trust you, they won't subscribe. Many won't even read. In fact, Americans' trust in media has plummeted to a record low, with just 1 in 3 Americans saying they have any trust in the media. A record high of Americans, so almost 40%, say they have zero trust in the media at all. Just 29% of independent voters trust media and a dismal 11% of Republicans. Of course, together, those two groups make up over 2/3 of the country. Even Democrats are losing faith, with trust dropping 18 points since COVID, driven especially by younger Democrats who no longer believe that journalists tell the truth. Incidentally, trust in media has fallen straight line since 2018, which is when they threw off the mask of objectivity, starting with Trump and then trying to cancel everybody from Alex Jones and Milo Yiannopoulos to all of us, converting themselves into the intellectual bodyguard of the Marxist elite, carrying water on everything from the vax to the BLM riots to, of course, transitory inflation and the miracle that is Bidenomics. It is hard to rebuild trust after all of that. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. The corporate media isn't just dying, it is actively killing itself, replaced by grassroots news sources who are often more expert and certainly are more honest. The news media will continue lying, they'll continue attacking their readers, they'll continue trying to censor you. The same game plan that has been wiping them out, and in the process progressively removing themselves from the conversation altogether. I'd actually expected to accelerate. Elon Musk has built a distribution channel on X or Twitter where the alternative media can finally compete on a level playing field with the dinosaurs. For example, these daily videos get 500,000 views, produced on an iPhone and a $100 mic, and there are thousands like me who are eager to replace the lying activists who run our dying mediocrity. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.
Well, that's a good video. I enjoyed that video because I think it's exactly true. We have a lying mainstream media. We don't trust it. Why should we? You know, and my book points out here that since Jack Kennedy was killed, 1963, this deep state has been running a Truman Show, the movie Truman Show. I guess Jim Carrey, where in fact he thought he was living a real life, but everybody he was interacting with were actors reading a script that was produced. He was in a television show, not a real life. And so we are in a architected reality that the intelligence agencies create, then present to us as if it were reality. But it's all architected to get more control for the intelligence agencies, for the government, for the globalists. And it's ultimately pushing us into serfdom. Craig, I think I want to ask you to comment on this because, again, this would be one of the main themes of this show and of the Truth Central altogether.
Well, I will tell you this. I've been in the field for a very, very long time. I'm a broadcast journalist, but I did have to take those college journalism courses and work with a lot of these people. This isn't new. I mean, activist journalism has been around since the 1920s, 30s, if you will, most prominently. And you've talked about Walter Duranty. We've talked, even the heralded Edward R. Murrow was an activist in many ways, although he did a better job of hiding it than most people. You might recall that there were a lot of journalists kind of laughing and giggling during the McCarthy trials. So this isn't new. But when I was taking journalism courses in the 90s, I had professors at SUNY New Paltz, State University of New York at New Paltz, heralding the idea of activist journalism, as in should journalists create or be a closer part of the story, or should journalists just report and let the reader decide? But the idea was a couple of these professors pushed the notion, and again, I'm sure this is being taught more so nowadays as you see what's going on in the mainstream media. But these people are they were teaching us that you should try to angle a story to, I believe the phrase was, comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, something like that, which is fine if it's the truth. But if it's not the truth, then you can't just you can't make things up, or you can't angle. One shouldn't angle a story a certain way just to make it look like that. Unfortunately, that's what we were taught.
What you're getting now, journalists who are lying, gaslighting,
Right.
I know they are, and so therefore, if there's no truth in the journalism, the activism is totalitarian, and they're just puppets of the government.
There's another component to this nowadays, which is the internet. These mainstream media information gatekeepers are trying so hard to put information out, they don't even bother confirming or reconfirming, just like they may have used to in the older days. They need to put things out before everybody else. Case in point, you had ABC. Remember the ABC giving the ladies of the View some news about Donald Trump possibly take face. I forget what it was, some kind of criminal charge that never existed. They were cheering it, and then it was found out an hour or two later that the story wasn't true. These things are happening right and left because of the competition. So you take the mainstream media and it's intertwining with the Democrat establishment and the idea that they still need to beat each other in their indoctrination stories. You probably have the worst world of journalism we have ever had, and it's only going to go a little bit farther downhill.
Well, it's a joke right now, and
Right.
let's play the next one. I like this next one as well because it's Mark Victor Hansen, and he's pointing out some really important things, and featured in this is my least favorite politician maybe ever, John Kerry. And John Kerry is making a fool of himself again. But let's play this. It's a bit long, but I want to play the whole thing because I want to comment on it afterwards. So, Chris, go ahead and play this next one.
When you start to see people like Bill Gates gobble up farmland, and you read what his foundation says about farming, when they say that we're going to have a particular type of agriculture, they want large blocks run by the government or by private consortia where they say we're not going to have animal-based proteins, we're not going to have stockyards, we're not going to have turkey farms, we're not going to have chicken. The academic mind always has the answers, but never in the real world. And they do a lot of damage.
Everywhere you look, small and medium-sized farms being gobbled up by these corporate mega farms because they can't keep up anymore. They can't comply with these endless streams of regulations that are coming down. These little small family farms that families have been farming for hundreds of years, in some cases longer. They're moving them all off their little plots of land and moving them into these big, horrific mega cities that they have built. And we're going to see that all over the world with the decimation of small farms. So if they're not bankrupted by economic forces, the government itself will shut them down.
Everything is falling apart. There is a shortage of food. Many people do not have enough money to eat every day.
Everybody's out here today because they
these types of regulations, but you can see the attack on farmers all over the world. It's an agenda that is carried out on a global level that is being pushed through government officials in respective countries.
This is precisely how the globalists have managed to take over national parliaments and national governments.
20 countries equal 80% of all the emissions. You solve money.
They're following a script where they are thinking already from the perspective of a global, bureaucratic, quasi-totalitarian system of governing, system of rules. This is an agenda, and all these countries are implementing the same policies. So they've targeted the farmers because that's the agenda.
Right now, things have tripled as far as costs for my own farming operation and for many farmers across the country. And I think you're going to see across the board higher food prices.
Food prices are already up dramatically this year, last year a little bit too. And we might see more empty shelves in America. Even the president is promising food shortages in his conversation. So there's no need for this to be happening. You know, the people are the ones that are going to be hurt. You know, not just farmers, you know, trying to make a living. It's going to be the food supply of this country, which is a staple of our security of our nation, being able to grow the grain and the crops that we do, that not only supplies us, but our allies and other trading partners around the world.
We have 8 billion people on the planet now And that's sustainable if they allow agriculture to continue to be mechanized and genetically altered. And I don't think they understand that if they tamper with that, you're going to have people go hungry.
We are headed into, I think, a time of very significant food shortages. Can we expect to see massive increases in food prices next year? Oh, no question about it. So I think the end goal of the war on farmers that we're seeing, which is guided at every step by the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030, is going to be a total consolidation of agriculture, a total consolidation of the food supply. And as every communist tyrant of the last 100 years has understood, if you control the food, you control the people. I think that's ultimately the end goal.
It's an important video, and I think I want to focus on it in depth, because the war on food is a war on humanity, and we've got to face that this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with demons, Satanists, who want to kill billions of people, and this entire agenda, this entire neo-Marxism, the entire construction of this gender insecurity and all this insanity is driven by one thing, and that is by the desire of a very small elite to control the world for their own benefit. And it's going to stop. We're creating the Anti-Globalist Alliance. You'll be hearing more about that in the near future. We're going to have a massive movement in Europe and the United States to turn back this evil alliance. That is this evil force of globalism has got to be defeated. If it doesn't, we'll end up in nuclear war, because these demons will have nuclear war in order to achieve their goals. Chris, you want to comment on this? And then I think we're going to cover a couple more stories as we go along.
Oh, you see you've seen this for a little bit. Again, the farmers are fighting back in Europe. I'm not sure how they're fighting back here, but we do have the voting booth, and that did happen in 2016. But you hear all of these Democrats in the U.S. A lot of times in Europe, but in the U.S., the idea is we have to finish this particular environmental problem by 2030. We have to make sure that that there aren't a lot of cow farts happening by 2030. So the idea is every little thing they're trying to manipulate, which includes cutting down farm production, which includes, of course, in Europe, cutting down meat production, and of course, killing dairy farmers. As we move forward, the idea is to control the food supply by a certain amount of time. You're looking at 2030, obviously, because of Agenda 2030. Keep in mind, these Democrats always whine about people on the right using dog whistles. Every time they say finish this by 2030 or 2032, it's a dog whistle telling the minions to, hey, we have to get this ready for the World Economic Forum Great Reset.
It's an echo chamber again, with another lying narrative. They're trying to pound into people that we've got global warming and we've got to do all. The next thing they'll do is get the World Health Organization to be able to declare a global lockdown for global warming, and say it's a disease. It's causing people to be sick all over the world. What's causing people to be sick all over the world is John Kerry. And John Kerry is one of the worst politicians ever to come on the face of the earth. And he is designed to get rich women and take their money. It's what he's been doing since he was a kid. And he it lives a lifestyle of jet setting around. He thinks he's a privileged pretty boy. When
all that Botox.
Let's go to a couple more stories that we want to cover before we're done. I want to cover the story about Israel, that Israel's warning now of a massive regional war. The Israelis attacked the Iranian embassy in Damascus, and they're expecting a massive Iranian attack in retaliation. So the Israeli embassies around the world are in a heightened state of alert, and extra Israeli Defense Force reservists have been called up, and home and weekend leave has been canceled for all combat troops as of yesterday, Thursday. The Israeli population is actually waiting for a response. Tehran has vowed vengeance coming for Monday Israeli strike on its embassy in Damascus. And most people believe it's going to be ballistic missiles raining down on Israeli cities. This, if it happens, is going to be an expansion of the war to be now Iran and Israel, and it's headed towards a nuclear confrontation again. So Israel's under a massive attack worldwide, with Hamas dominating the universities of the United States, with students out protesting for Hamas, and it's insanity. This is kind of the end of the idea that we should support Israel as a Jewish state. Is the Biden administration's policy. Blinken is going around, our genius Secretary of State is going around trying to get a ceasefire so that Hamas can have some stabilized position in Gaza. And Netanyahu is systematically destroying Hamas in Gaza, ignoring the world's pleas that this is genocide, that the Hamas are, the Palestinians are being killed, and all these numbers of civilian casualties we're getting. The reality is it was Hamas who attacked Israel. And that's forgotten in the leftist narrative, which hates the Jews. We are having anti-Semitism at an all-time high. And whenever anti-Semitism begins to prevail, we are back into a situation of world chaos. It was exactly the same kind of circumstances that led in World War II to the Holocaust. And that didn't turn out too well for Nazi Germany. This idea is there's so much in the world going on that is anti-God, denying God, ignoring God. We will have a judgment of God, and it could be a nuclear war before the end of the year. I've been continuing to warn people that if these Satanist Democrats, communists, find out that Trump is going to win by a massive amount, even with all their attempted voter fraud, now the Democrats are the Social Security numbers are being issued to the new immigrants coming into the country. And so therefore, Democrats are beginning to register voters on just Social Security numbers, which means the Democrats see a big field of Hispanics, new arrivals who will vote against Donald Trump. Well, I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. There are various groups who are looking into this registration of voters, and I'm not so sure that the Democrats are all that confident they're going to get the Hispanics who do not agree with them. I mean, the whole idea that the Hispanic macho culture is not particularly fond of men in dresses, which seem to be the Communist Democratic Woke Party's poster child. Let's go to the next story. I want to cover one more today. The Biden Department of Energy is now slapping new regulations on key power grid components. We have a government ruled by bureaucrats who are nameless, not elected, or making laws through the Federal Register, passing regulations. So on Thursday morning, the Department of Energy said that regulations are going to accelerate the green agenda, which again is another lie. Lee Harvey Oswald killed Jack Kennedy. Another lie. As this new book shows that I've written with David Mantik, Jack Kennedy was shot twice from the front. The Texas School Book Depository was behind the Kennedy limousine when supposedly the shooting started. And there's photographs which document that. All right, so the Department of Energy is saying now that the utilities and businesses are going to have to target over $824 million per year in electric costs out of pocket in order to make the power grid more efficient by going to these new transformers, which are made with grain-oriented electrical steel. Grain-oriented electrical steel. These people are going to take food and make it into steel because they think it's more green. So they want this amorphous alloy, which is a lesser used steel core material, to be our transformers of the future, which again is a ridiculous idea. And the Department of Energy is making these regulations, envisioning that by 2030, we're going to have electric vehicles, we're going to transform the economy, we're going to be green, and we're going to save the world. It's just not going to happen this way. This is another failed idea. Everything the Democrats in this woke are proposing are failed ideas. They don't work. So electric vehicles don't work. Solar energy and wind power do not provide the robust energy we need for a modern industrial state. These demons know this. They're trying to kill people. And that's, I think, where we're facing a final battle coming up between good and evil. That is, I think, the end days. And we're in that right now. I'm going to wrap this up today. It's going to be a very busy day for me here. And I've got a lot of media going on with this new book. And we'll be back on Monday. Chris, any final comments as we wrap up?
I do have quite a few. We're watching. I was watching the press conferences this week when it came to discussing the Biden and Austin calls with their Israeli counterparts. And again, Joe Biden and Lloyd Austin are making demands on Israel for ceasefires, to investigate. I understand they probably should look into what happened with the aid workers, but these people seem to not understand you can't fight a politically correct war against people who are hiding amongst citizens, using tunnel warfare under hospitals, using meat shields, and of course, with about 6 or 7 other factions which surround you, ready to pounce.
Well, the Israelis have never been able to fight a war without restraints. Even the George W. Bush administration was saying enough, and
Right.
Restraining Israel. Certainly, Obama restrained Israel. He wouldn't hardly let them fight against the Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon. And
big difference, though. There's a big difference here.
What's that?
Obama commanded some respect by the left, which were running Israel at the time, okay, or even the slate left. Netanyahu even tried to open his arms to Hamas, so we'll keep that in mind. Bush also commanded some respect. Biden does not, and neither does most of his administration.
Yeah, there's no respect for Biden anywhere in the world.
Right.
And Biden is sniffing little girls, and he's wandering around the stage. He's the official prosecutor says he's suffering from senior dementia, and he's running the country. Give me a break. This is nonsense. This is what the who's the wizard behind the screen? Obama. That's the wizard behind the screen, and this is what the global elite wants. They want to run in secret on elected officials, making dictum that will kill people, kill billions of people. They think there's too many of us.
That's right. Yeah, pay no attention to the man behind the ice cream truck.
Right, exactly. All right. In the end, God will win. Let's wrap up today. In the end, God will win. God will win here too. In the end, God always wins. We're going to suffer a judgment of God. I encourage people in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14. Join me. Let's get down on our knees and let's repent for the millions of babies who have been torn apart in the womb since Roe v. Wade. All of the taking of God out of our lives, out of the public square, out of our schools. The only solution to this, and God is sovereign. God has foreseen all this. It's written. We can read Revelation and we can see it happening. God wins on this. God is sovereign. God rules. Satan goes back to hell. We've got to do our part in making sure that happens. We're going to be talking in future weeks. We're going to be redoing our website. We're going to be talking about the Anti-Globalist Alliance. And we're going to be very active over the next few months trying to prevent the nuclear war from happening in October, the October surprise. I think that's the last step the Democrats would take to prevent Donald Trump from being president. And I mean that seriously. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. This is thetruthcentral.com. Thank you for joining us. We're broadcasting with podcasts every weekday. We'll be back on Monday. God bless.